The sound of laughter echoed through the military hangar, sharp, mocking, and cruel. A group of young soldiers stood in a circle around a grease-stained man, crouched beside an old Humvee. His hands, rough and scarred, worked with quiet precision, as if every turn of the wrench mattered more than their jeers. "Hey, Grandpa," one snorted, nudging another. "Try not to fall asleep under there." More laughter followed. The man didn't react. He just tightened one last bolt, exhaled, and stood slowly. His calm eyes meeting theirs with a kind of stillness that made them uneasy. They didn't know who he was. They only saw a quiet, middle-aged mechanic in a worn hoodie, fixing what they'd broken. But that calm silence shattered the moment a high-ranking general entered the hangar and froze at the sight of the man's faded dog tag. The recruit stopped laughing when the general whispered, voice trembling, "That's Iron Viper?" Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. The morning sun cut through the hangar's glass panels, streaking light across dusty floors. Ethan Cole, 42, white single dad, tightened a bolt under the hood of a military jeep. His posture was steady, practiced, every movement efficient. Nearby, 3 recruits leaned against a workbench, sipping from energy drink cans and whispering. "Man, this guy moves like he's 80, one said, chuckling. Another replied, "They really hired civilians now? No wonder the fleet keeps failing inspections." Ethan didn't flinch. He'd heard worse, from louder voices, under far deadlier skies. He just kept working, quiet as the hum of the tools around him. But one voice broke through the mockery. A younger recruit, maybe 19, stepped forward. "Sir, the way you angled that ratchet, that's not from training manuals. You learned that from field work, didn't you?" Ethan finally looked up. "What's your name, son?" "Private Daniel Harris, sir." He smiled faintly. "Don't call me sir, I'm just the guy keeping your brakes from giving out when you hit the highway." Daniel frowned, watching the older man's hands, steady despite the burn scars. "You used to serve, didn't you?" Ethan's jaw tightened. A long time ago, another lifetime. Before Daniel could ask more, another recruit snickered. "Oh yeah? What were you, coffee runner for the troops?" The others burst into laughter again. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag and turned, meeting the young man's grin with a calm stare. "Son, one day you'll realize, real soldiers don't need to brag. Their silence does the talking." For a second, the room went quiet. Even the air seemed still. Then someone muttered, "Whatever, he's just a mechanic." Ethan's lips curved into a patient smile. That's right. A mechanic who still remembers what keeps engines and people alive. He handed Daniel the wrench. "Try it. Loosen it up a bit, feel the balance. Don't fight the metal, work with it." Daniel hesitated, and then followed his lead. For a brief moment, the teasing stopped, replaced by a rare thing inside the hangar, respect. But peace never lasted long in places built on ego. From the far end of the hangar, a commanding voice barked orders, followed by the echo of heavy boots. The soldiers stood at attention instantly. Ethan didn't look up. He didn't need to. He recognized that walk anywhere. General Marcus Hale. "Inspection," Hale's voice thundered. "Whose unit is responsible for that vehicle?" The recruit straightened. "Ours, sir, but the mechanic was adjusting the calibration." Hale's gaze fell on Ethan and stopped cold. His face, lined with decades of command, went pale. The recruits exchanged nervous looks. "Sir, something wrong?" The general's eyes locked on the grease-stained man standing calmly beside the jeep. He stepped closer, voice breaking slightly. "Where did you get that dog tag?" Ethan turned, his voice low. "Didn't get it, sir. Earned it." The recruits looked at each other, confused. The general reached out, touching the faint letters carved into the metal plate. "Cole, Ethan R. Call sign, Iron Viper." His breath caught. No, it can't be. Ethan's eyes softened. "Long time, General." And just like that, the laughter died. For good. The silence that followed was heavy enough to press against every chest in the hangar. The soldiers, who had been laughing only minutes ago, now stood stiff, their eyes darting between the gray-haired mechanic and the general whose expression had shifted from authority to disbelief. General Marcus Hale, a man known for never hesitating, was frozen. His voice, when it finally came, was quieter than anyone had ever heard it. "Sergeant Cole. Iron Viper." He said the name like a ghost he never expected to see again. Ethan rubbed his hands on the rag, looking uneasy. "I'd rather you didn't call me that anymore, sir." The recruits stared blankly. One of them whispered, "Iron what?" Hale turned slowly toward them. Iron Viper was the call sign of the most resourceful combat mechanic in the 7th Tactical Division. He saved my convoy during Al-Khafji when our comms were dead and our vehicles were on fire. He disappeared afterward. We all thought he was gone. Ethan exhaled, eyes on the concrete. "I didn't disappear. Just had nothing left to fight for." The young soldiers exchanged glances. A moment earlier, they were towering over him. Now every one of them seemed smaller. General Hale gestured to his aide. "Get the records room on the line. Confirm his service file." The aide ran off immediately. Hale faced Ethan again. "You were decorated. Silver Star, Distinguished Service Cross, commendations from 3 units. Why are you here changing oil on our vehicles?" Ethan's voice was low, but steady. "Because engines don't lie, sir. People do." The words landed harder than any salute. The recruits could feel the weight of something deeper, something broken behind that calm face. A few minutes later, the aide returned, breathless, holding a printed sheet. "Confirmed, General. Ethan R. Cole, former Staff Sergeant. Service record classified after '09. Status, presumed killed in action." Gasps echoed through the hangar. Daniel, the youngest recruit, whispered, "He's supposed to be dead." Ethan gave a tired smile. Not dead. Just tired of being remembered for things that cost too much. General Hale stepped closer. "You saved 43 men that day. You dragged me out of a burning truck. I owed you my life, and I never even got to say thank you." Ethan looked up for the first time with eyes that had seen too many horizons. "You already thanked me, sir. You came home. That was enough." For a moment, even the machinery seemed to stop humming. The general cleared his throat, trying to steady himself. "What happened after?" "We searched for months." Ethan sighed, wiping a smudge of grease from his arm. "They pulled me out of the desert half dead. Doctors said I'd never walk right again, so I didn't go back. Figured the Army didn't need a limping mechanic with nightmares." Hale's jaw tightened. "You could have come to me." "I tried. Letters went unanswered. Guess I wasn't the hero worth remembering." The general looked away, ashamed. Then Ethan added softly, "But I still had my son. That was enough reason to fix things again, even if it was just trucks." That single line shifted the air again. The recruits, who moments ago mocked him, felt a sting behind their ribs. The general's gaze softened. "You're raising him alone?" Hale asked. Ethan nodded. "His mom passed when he was little. He thinks I'm just a mechanic. That's how I want it. No war stories, just a normal life." The general studied him quietly. Then, turning toward the recruits, he said, "You all think service means swagger. It doesn't. It means you keep your head down and your heart open, just like he did." The men looked down at their boots. Daniel stepped forward. "Sir, I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have laughed. None of us should have." Ethan reached out, resting a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Don't apologize. Learn from it. One day you'll see someone who looks broken, and you'll remember they might have carried more than you ever will." The kindness in his tone made Daniel's throat tighten. General Hale glanced around. "Everyone out. I want the bay cleared except Sergeant Cole." As the soldiers shuffled away, Hale stood alone with him. The older man's voice softened. "I spent my life preaching honor and brotherhood, and still I let good men fade into silence. That ends today." Ethan shook his head. "Sir, please, no ceremonies. I came here for a paycheck, not a parade." But Hale was already pulling his phone from his pocket. "Too late for that. You deserve recognition. If my men can laugh at a war hero, then my command's lost its spine." Ethan stepped forward, grabbing his wrist gently. "Don't do that. These kids, they just don't know. Let them learn, not fear." The general hesitated, then lowered the phone. "You still leading men, even when you're trying not to?" Hale murmured. "That's what made you Iron Viper." Ethan smiled faintly. "That name belongs to a ghost. I'm just Ethan now." The general studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Then, Ethan, how about you teach my recruits how to handle an engine like a soldier?" Ethan chuckled. "You want me to train them?" Hale smiled. "I want them to remember what real discipline looks like." Ethan thought about it for a moment, then looked toward the hangar doors where Daniel waited awkwardly. "All right. But I'll need more coffee and fewer jokes." The general laughed, the tension easing for the first time all day. "Deal." By late afternoon, Ethan stood surrounded by the same recruits who'd mocked him hours earlier. His hands guided theirs through the motions, showing torque control, alignment, and how to listen to the machine instead of forcing it. Daniel followed every move carefully. "It's like music," he muttered. Ethan nodded. "Exactly. The engine tells you when it's hurting. Most people just don't listen." He stepped back as the engine roared to life, smooth even. The recruits cheered quietly. Ethan's voice was calm. "See, respect it, and it'll serve you. Same goes for people." Across the hangar, General Hale watched, a rare smile on his face. The man who once saved his life was teaching again, not with rank, but with heart. As the sun dipped through the high windows, Hale approached. "There's a memorial at dawn tomorrow. I'd be honored if you came." Ethan hesitated. "Haven't been to one in years." "Then it's time," Hale said gently. "They'd want you there." Ethan looked toward the sunset. For the first time in a long while, the light didn't hurt his eyes. "Maybe," he whispered. "It's time to stop hiding." The general extended his hand. "Welcome home, Sergeant." Ethan shook it firmly. "Just call me Dad. That's the only title I'm trying to earn now." Hale smiled, saluting him with quiet respect. "Then you've already earned the best one there is." As night settled over the base, the engines in the hangar cooled, the laughter grew softer, and the recruits found themselves carrying a story they'd never forget. One about humility, kindness, and the quiet kind of strength that doesn't need medals to be real. The next morning, the base felt different. The usual chatter over coffee was hushed. The echo of boots down the corridor seemed slower, more deliberate. Word had spread like wildfire. The old mechanic was Iron Viper. the ghost from every veteran's story that once made rookies straighten their backs and shut their mouths. Ethan Cole arrived at the hangar before sunrise, as always. The world outside was still gray, fog hugging the ground, and his breath rose like smoke in the cold air. He carried his battered thermos, his steps steady, the faint ache in his leg, reminding him that he wasn't as young as he once was. But today wasn't about pain. Today, it was about facing ghosts he'd spent 15 years running from. Inside, the young recruits were already lined up, Daniel among them. They stood silently, eyes forward, no jokes, no whispers. Each of them wore clean uniforms and faces heavy with respect. "Morning, boys," Ethan said quietly, setting his thermos down beside the Jeep. "Didn't expect a welcoming committee?" Daniel stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Sir, Ethan, we wanted to help prep for the memorial. The general told us what today means." Ethan's gaze softened. "You didn't have to?" Daniel shook his head. "We wanted to." The simple honesty in his voice hit harder than any salute. Ethan nodded, tightening his jaw as he looked around the hangar, the same place they had laughed at him in just yesterday. Now it felt like sacred ground. By 800 hours, the courtyard outside the main headquarters was filled with uniforms. The flag fluttered at half-mast. Rows of chairs faced the stage, where the names of fallen soldiers scrolled on a massive screen. Ethan stood behind the crowd, hands clasped, trying not to draw attention. But whispers followed him anyway. "That's him. Iron Viper. He's alive?" General Hale called a memorial just for him. He didn't want the eyes. He just wanted to remember quietly. General Marcus Hale stepped to the podium, his voice strong, but his expression carried the weight of memory. 15 years ago, during Operation Iron Veil, a convoy of 43 men was ambushed outside Al-Khafji. They should not have survived. They did, because one man refused to run. He repaired armored transports under enemy fire. He held his position until reinforcements arrived. Then he vanished. He paused, looking straight at Ethan. This man's name was etched on our memorial wall as KIA, but he's here today, alive, humble, and still serving this country in his own quiet way. The crowd turned as Ethan froze. He wanted to disappear, but Hale's voice kept going. Sergeant Ethan R. Cole, Iron Viper, is more than a soldier. He's proof that true heroes don't need medals or ranks. They need heart. And even after losing everything, he kept giving. He kept fixing. Not just machines, but people. Applause erupted, not the loud, rehearsed kind, but a rising wave of respect that shook the air. Ethan's throat tightened. "General, I'm not—" he started, but Hale cut him off with a raised hand. "You are," Hale said firmly, "and I will not let history forget you again." The general reached into a small velvet box and withdrew a gleaming silver emblem. The silver star, reinstated with full honors. Ethan shook his head. "Sir, please, that was another life. I'm just a dad trying to pay bills." Hale stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then accept it for your son, to show him what it means to stand when it's hardest." The words made Ethan's jaw clench. For the first time in years, he let the past touch him. He looked out across the courtyard, at the recruits who'd mocked him, now standing proudly with straight backs, eyes burning with admiration. Daniel was among them, holding the flag rope steady, his expression unreadable but fierce with pride. Ethan took the medal, not for himself, but for every name that stayed etched in the stone wall behind him. "All right," he said quietly, pinning it to his chest, "but only if this ceremony ends with something useful." The general frowned, curious. "Useful?" Ethan smiled. "Yeah, a lesson. He turned toward the recruits, his voice steady, deep, and calm. You all wear these uniforms and think toughness is about shouting louder than the next guy. It's not. It's about knowing when to speak, when to listen, and when to help someone up instead of laughing when they fall. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind paused. He gestured toward the flag. That cloth doesn't stand for pride. It stands for the hands that held it steady when everyone else ran. You don't have to be a hero, just don't be cruel, that's enough. Daniel's eyes glistened. The recruits straightened, every face carved with respect. General Hale nodded, voice breaking slightly. You see, gentlemen, this is what leadership looks like. Not arrogance, not medals, just integrity. After the ceremony ended, most of the base returned to their duties. But Ethan lingered near the wall of names. His fingers traced one carved line, H.D. Cole, his brother. He'd never said goodbye properly. A shadow fell across the stone. General Hale stood beside him, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. Still the same blend you drank in the desert. Ethan chuckled softly. Bitter and burnt? Exactly. Hale smiled faintly, handing him one. They stood in silence for a moment, steam rising from the cups, memories pressing heavy on their chests. Then Hale spoke. You could come back, you know. Teach at the academy. Train the next generation. Ethan took a slow sip. I'm not sure I fit in that world anymore. You fit better than most of us ever did, Hale said quietly. You lead without shouting. That's rare. Ethan looked at the recruits across the courtyard. Daniel and the others helping fold the flag. Careful and precise. Maybe I already started teaching, he said softly. The general nodded. Yeah, maybe you did. That evening, when the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan walked back toward the hangar. The air smelled faintly of oil and metal, and the faint buzz of an engine carried from inside. Daniel was still there, tightening a bolt on the same Jeep they'd worked on together. Didn't expect anyone left, Ethan said, stepping in. Daniel turned, wiping his hands nervously. Just wanted to make sure it's perfect. You said an engine deserves respect. Ethan smiled, proud. You listened. I did more than that, Daniel said quietly. I called my dad. We haven't talked in years. I told him I was wrong, about him, about a lot of things. Ethan paused. What made you do that? Daniel's voice trembled slightly. You, the way you carry yourself. You made me realize strength isn't loud, it's consistent. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a warmth spread through his chest that wasn't pain, wasn't guilt. It was something lighter. Hope, maybe. He placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. Then don't waste it. Be the kind of man who builds others, not breaks them. Daniel nodded, eyes shining. Yes, sir. Ethan, he corrected gently. Just Ethan. As night settled over the base, the hangar lights flickered off one by one. Ethan stepped outside, gazing up at the stars, the same ones he'd stared at during long, lonely nights in the desert. For years they'd felt cold, distant. Tonight, they felt closer. He whispered under his breath, Guess I made it home after all. Behind him, General Hale watched from the shadows, hands behind his back. He didn't interrupt. He didn't salute. He simply stood there, an old soldier honoring another, not with ceremony, but with silence. And somewhere deep inside that quiet, a kind of peace finally settled over Ethan Cole. The quiet mechanic, the forgotten soldier, the single dad who taught a generation that humility and kindness could command more respect than any medal ever could. The man once known as Iron Viper, walked away from the hangar that night, not as a hero, not as a soldier, but as something rarer, a man at peace with his past.